Good morning, Fullerton. I'm Mayor Jennifer Fitzgerald, and I'm really pleased to be back with you today for another virtual town hall. And today we're going to talk about homelessness. One of the main questions, concerns, comments that we get from people in Fullerton are uh, directed at homelessness. What's the city doing regarding homelessness? How can we help more of the homeless get off the streets? And so today I'm joined by three people who are involved every day in getting people off the streets and giving them a second chance at life. And so we're going to talk about homelessness. But before we do, I want to just give you a couple updates. Of course, no one needs to remind you that we're still in the crisis surrounding the COVID virus. And so I just want to encourage you to continue to wear cloth face coverings when you are out in public. To keep you safe and others around you safe. It is mandatory, according to the governor of California, all throughout California, to wear those face coverings. So I know that we all, it may be convenient for us to do that, but it's a small price to pay to keep people safe. I also want to make sure that you know about a new program that we were able to start in Fullerton called Feed Fullerton. And it is a program where senior citizens and vulnerable individuals can get free meals from local restaurants. So if you would like more information about that, please go to the Fullerton Community Center website for that information. And that website address is fullertoncommunitycenter.com. Again, to get information about Feed Fullerton, go to fullertoncommunitycenter.com. I would also encourage you to shop local. Many of our businesses have had to bob and weave and be more flexible than they've ever had to in their business careers. And so we have businesses in town who are really struggling and need all of us who live here and work here to support them. So I'd encourage you, as you're able, to shop local, to dine local, and to let people who are in business in town know that you support them. And while I'm at that, I'll just encourage you that when you see one of our emergency responders, one of our public safety professionals, I know they would appreciate your thanks and your appreciation for the work that they continue to do. If you're like me, you're getting ready to, quote, send kids back to school while keeping them at home. And so I would encourage you as well to hang in there and to know that we're all going to get through this together. We're all going to have some successes and some failures, but we're going to get through this. And I know that I appreciate all of our school districts and our teachers and administrators at each of our school sites who are working hard to make sure that our kids don't fall behind. So as we go into our discussion today about homelessness, I want to make sure that you know that we're accepting comments and questions on our Facebook page. And I'll do my best as people comment or have questions to include those questions in our discussion today. I want to start off by just letting you know a little bit about the framework that the city has to operate in with regards to homelessness. So Fullerton has a history of being extremely compassionate with regards to the homeless. We have numerous nonprofits who have operated in this city for decades to serve vulnerable individuals, folks who are on the verge of becoming homeless, and those who are on our streets. In recent times, laws have changed and court rulings have mandated a greater level of service and commitment, not only from nonprofits, but from local governments. And Fullerton has responded to that. Many years ago, I think it was 2014, it could have been 2015, the city of Fullerton partnered with a couple other cities, including the city of Anaheim, to build a large permanent emergency shelter. It's called Bridges, and it's in Anaheim, and that has 200 beds. The city of Fullerton contributed $500,000 to the purchase of that property. We were subsequently involved in a lawsuit where really every city in Orange County was drawn into a lawsuit with regards to homelessness. And we have since settled that lawsuit in North Orange County. So that the local governments in Orange County, all 34 cities, have been grouped together into what we call service planning areas. So we are in the North Service Planning area that includes North Orange County. The North Service Planning area was able to reach a settlement in that lawsuit. And that settlement required us to make sure that in Orange County, we had enough beds available to house at least 60% of those identified as unsheltered in North Orange County. Fullerton's count at that time, which was 2017, was 188 individuals unsheltered. So we've been working since that time with our fellow North Orange County cities to build shelter beds for two very important purposes. The most important purpose, of course, is because we don't want people to live on the streets for their own safety and for their own health. And so we've worked with specifically Placentia and Buena Park, supporting their emergency shelters that are now open and that have that each have enough beds, I think, to get us to about 200. And we've put an initial $500,000 into the building of those shelters, and we've committed over $500,000 annually from the city of Fullerton for the operation of those shelters. So we went above and beyond this year and partnered with the Illumination Foundation, and we're joined today by their executive director, Paul Leon, to build a first of its kind shelter here in Fullerton that is both recuperative care and navigation center. So these are words that we use in homeless services that I think people day to day don't really know the meaning of. So let me tell you, recuperative care means that homeless people who go through our emergency rooms in our hospitals and have hospital stays have no place to recover when they need to get out of the hospital. And so they would come in Fullerton to the Illumination Foundation and be able to stay while they recuperate. And then the theory is, and it's been proven out in other places, that we have time to get them into permanent housing. And then the navigation center beds are really emergency shelter beds, but what makes them different from an emergency shelter is that we have wraparound services placed there at that shelter available to those people that are everything from social services to housing and work placement. Because the whole purpose is not just to give a bed and a shower and a hot meal. The whole purpose is to give them a second chance. So I just think it's important to set that framework because I have many people ask me why we spend so much money on homeless or why we don't spend more money on homeless. And so I want you to understand that we operate under the parameters of being good neighbors like we always have, but also what the courts and what state law mandates local government does. So it's in that backdrop that I want to welcome my special guests. Where I'm joined today by three great men who are helping to get the homeless off the street. The first is Brad Fieldhouse. Brad is the president of CityNet, which is a homeless service nonprofit who not only runs homeless shelters, but also partners with our police department on an day-to-day basis to help with the case management of the homeless neighbors that we encounter on our streets. I'm also joined by the executive director of the Illumination Foundation, who I mentioned earlier, Paul Leon. And Mr. Leon and his organization run homeless shelters and are our partners here in Fullerton to do our recuperative care and navigation center. And we'll talk a little bit later about the fact that that's going to open next week, and we're very excited about it, adding 150 beds in total to our network of shelter beds. And then I'm also joined by one of the finest of the Fullerton Police Department, our homeless liaison officer, Matthew Kalsher. Matthew's been a police officer here in Fullerton for 5 years, and he's been a homeless liaison officer for 2.5 years. I want to make sure everybody in Fullerton understands that Fullerton was the first city in Orange County to start a homeless liaison officer program. Many cities throughout our county and across the state have adopted our model. And Matt has been a fantastic HLO, like I said, for 2.5 years. He go back onto patrol. So I want to take this opportunity specifically, Matt, to thank you for your dedication in this regard. And Matt, why don't you tell a little bit about what homeless liaison officers do?
We do street outreach with CityNet. We are in contact with different service providers, nonprofit organizations to try and street level homelessness.
And tell me how many days a week what are your hours?
We used to work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then my partner worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we would cover 6 days.
I know Matt's having a little internet problem, so we're hoping that we're going to be able to fix that as we go along. Thanks, Matt. So basically, between you and your partner, there is full-time coverage for outreach to our homeless.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for the work that you do. Brad, let's go to you. Will you tell us a little bit about CityNet as an organization, and then talk about your work with our police department?
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to be joining the town hall today. Yeah, so my name is Brad Fieldhouse. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called CityNet. We are based in Anaheim, so our home is Orange County. As you had mentioned earlier, we sort of do we're part of we are part of a continuum of care. So a whole coalition of agencies, and so we in various contexts do different things. But in Fullerton specifically, we've been working there since February of 2018. We came on board and did outreach with your HLO team. So we've been doing street outreach on an ongoing basis since then. We do have a dedicated team that is committed to 40 hours a week. It's a team of 2 that spend all their time working on cases in the city of Fullerton. I looked, the number that I see looking at our case files is we currently have 87 individuals. That's a fluid number, obviously, but there's 87 individuals that we're working with right now out on the streets or recently put into a shelter that we're hoping we work with them to stay there. So obviously, we get the privilege of partnering with officers that are dedicated to this. So to speak to the significance of a program like that, having officers dedicated with that specialty is a game changer, as that's why it's being copied in other locations for sure. So that's what we do. So we do referrals and placements. We do a lot of the street outreach, meaning we're out, behind businesses and on the streets and trying to build trust and offer the various resources to the individuals that are out there. It's never a good day to be a person experiencing homelessness, but the truth is with the coordination that's happening around the region, it is becoming a better day because there are options. There are more options to help people, as you said, sort of get that hand up. Whereas before, resources were a little bit more scarce. And now the leadership of the North Orange County and City of Fullerton have really stepped up and are really sort of providing that base. So for us, working with law enforcement, that gives us a number of places for us to refer people into.
Thanks very much for that, Brad. And let me introduce Paul Leon. Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about Illumination Foundation and then specifically the work you're doing in Fullerton? We might have lost Paul. I actually don't see him on our panelist view. So let's go ahead. We'll bring Paul back on as soon as we see him rejoin us. But let's just get in, Brad, you and I, to some of the nitty gritty. So even as we're on Facebook right now, I have a lot of people already concerned about different encampments and problem areas here in town. So why don't you help me talk about what kind of interactions do you have when you go out and encounter the homeless?
Yeah, so we're both proactive and reactive. So as concerns come from residents, business owners, and things like that, and it sort of goes through the city processes, whatever they may be, individual conversations or otherwise, we definitely work with law enforcement to respond to those. We are often with law enforcement, and sometimes we are not with law enforcement. Sometimes it's very important for us for individuals on the streets to know that we do partner with law enforcement. They're part of the solution. They're not out there trying to, arrest themselves out of homelessness. They don't believe that. They're there to support with us. So various times we're responding to hotspots. We know most, if not all, the people on the streets. We've talked with many of them many, many times. So the goal is to sort of, just as you would imagine, when you care for somebody, you try to figure out their unique path forward. So we're asking lots of questions. Many of them are very personal in nature, and building that sort of a trust. And then we sort of see what options are available and try and encourage them to, with their individual, these are adults in most cases, encouraging them to consider the options that are before them, and then we will support them any way possible. We have a van, we'll do transports, we'll take them to various locations, we'll take them to go see a location so they could see it. And then once they're there, we support them. We do have an outreach line that's available that we provide for neighbors to call. That number is 714-451-6198.
Okay, I want you to repeat that number, Brad, and explain what that hotline is for us.
Yeah, so it's 714-451-6198. That is on our website. If you go to citynet.org, that number is right there. You could get it. It is designed for people that are experiencing homelessness to have a connection point to us. We do track those calls. It's not necessarily a hotline, say for like graffiti removal or something. It's not necessarily for the general public. It's just a general outreach line that we have staff that answer those calls or return those calls. Once we build a bridge with an individual, we give them our personal cell phone numbers. So it's not just sort of a generic, as soon as we talk to somebody and we know that they are interested, by reaching out to us, we know they're interested, then we give them our personal cell phone numbers, and then we can work with them on an ongoing basis. But it's sort of a number that we put out there if and when, even if it's the second, third, fourth, fifth time that we've tried to work with them and now they're ready to talk to us, we will answer those calls and respond and set up appointments and do what we can. So that's kind of a blanket that's out there. Most of the individuals in Fullerton have that number.
Okay, Officer Kalsher, talk a little bit about how residents can contact, who they should contact if they see or experience homeless people who they think need help.
Well, those experiencing homelessness may require a variety of services. If someone's looking for assistance, call CityNet's outreach line, which Brad already provided, or mental health support, which you can contact 1-800-364-2221. You can also call 211, which provides a variety of homeless services. And then you can also contact the city at 714-738-6562 to speak to city staff who can point you in the right resources. These contacts are all on the city website.
Okay, so a common comment that I hear, and I'm seeing on Facebook today, is get them out of our city. And what I need to say to that is that, first of all, as I said earlier, Fullerton has always taken a compassionate approach to try to get people a second chance at life. And that's what you're hearing today from all of these folks who are dedicated full-time to homeless services. Legally, that is not an option for us. So there are many constraints under which we operate. As I said earlier, the legal settlement that we entered into said that in North Orange County had to provide a minimum of 525 shelter beds for the homeless before we could enforce what is known as an anti-camping ordinance. And right now, even before our extra shelter here in Fullerton with the Illumination Foundation is built, we have 677 beds open between Anaheim and the rest of the North Orange County cities. So the Illumination Foundation shelter here in Fullerton adds 150 beds to that 677 number. So we far surpass the settlement obligations. And so, you know, in the past where we have had to allow people to continue sleeping on the street, we are able now to offer them beds and to, as Brad said, it's no one's desire to arrest people or to even ticket them. It's to get them off the streets to help them. So that will continue to be our priority because we have so many options now that we didn't have before. Matt, talk to us a little bit about when you go out to a homeless encampment. Talk about the freeway underpasses, the hot spots in Fullerton. What success are you having getting people off the streets?
Our main goal is, again, resources, get them into shelters, support housing, what have you. We utilize sitting at a ton with their outreach workers. And we basically go resources first before any enforcement action is taken.
Okay, thanks. And people who, I was just contacted by a group of homeowners who have homeless encamped right behind their walls on railroad property. So when you hear about that, what do you do?
Well, there's two railroad companies that are predominantly in Fullerton. It's BNSF and then another company. And BNSF is really good about coming out and cleaning up their railroad and their right-of-ways. And then if something is an ongoing issue, our homeless task crew goes out on roads and
Okay, great. And Paul, I'm glad to see that you were able to get back on. We'd love to hear about what Illumination Foundation does as an organization and about your partnership with the city of Fullerton.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we sure can.
So Illumination Foundation does housing and healthcare. We're unique in the fact that we're providers of both. We have contracts with Cal Optima, the county, in both areas. But I think, like Brad said, that there's just so many more opportunities now for homeless because we have started to fill in that continuum. And we now are starting to work really closely with other nonprofits. And Fullerton, I have to say, was the first city, and we've been doing this 15 years in Orange County, was the first city to recognize a regional approach. We have for years been advocating and telling people, our clients don't recognize boundaries. They could be in Anaheim, Stanton, Fullerton, and they could access all three cities. And so by actually having just a city approach, we were losing so much of the continuity that providers like CityNet, Mercy House, us, and others were trying to access. You'd hit a wall and then couldn't work with that city. So, we were so excited to work with Fullerton because they realized, okay, this is a regional problem. We're going to allow a shelter in our district. And I think it's been shown now that shelters can be safe, effective, and if they are run correctly, it really enhances the neighborhood and really assists police, fire, and all the city services, and in particular the residents. So we primarily, Illumination Foundation, we work more in the middle. We work with mental health, substance abuse, and housing. We have psychiatrists, we have doctors, we have a whole medical team that is totally separate, that will be up and running probably in December, that will have a full team that Fullerton will be able to access. That we get referrals through CityNet, through the county outreach, and through other nonprofits, and of course, the police department. So people can't just walk into the shelter. They have to be screened. They also have to go through one of those entities to be referred to us. But we're pretty excited to be open Monday and to start taking residents in Fullerton that really need a place to stay and be safe. And from day one, we're working with them to get them into permanent supportive housing and increase that pipeline.
Great, thanks very much. I want to specifically thank the Valencia Park neighborhood who came out. The Valencia Park neighborhood are the closest neighbors to the Illumination Foundation Navigation Center and Recuperative Care Center on Commonwealth, and they came out en masse to support this project. And I've been at this long enough to know that often neighbors of a site where we talk about building a homeless shelter are not too excited about that. And I really applaud not only the Valencia Park community, but also our faith community in town for really partnering with us and coming alongside Illumination Foundation in the city to make sure that this is a win-win for all of us. Officer Coucher, are you still on right now? I don't see him. So Brad, let's talk. Oh, you are still here. Okay, great. Let's talk about a question that also is commonly asked. Why are homeless people allowed to just hang out in the parks all day?
So, being homeless is not a crime. Merely resting, sleeping, standing in a particular area is not illegal. However, the activity becomes lawful if illegal behavior or actions are taken. For example, like possession of an open container of alcohol, public urination, defecation, lying or sitting to obstruct anyone, camping, or another activity that's prohibited or illegal. If you observe this, you can call the police department front desk at 714-738-6800, and they're available 24/7. Or if it's an emergency, call 911. But again, being homeless in a park during the day is not illegal.
And I want to point out that you and your partner, along with CityNet, are out there full-time, interacting one-on-one personally with those who are homeless. And talk, Officer Coucher, about what's your goal when you go interact with a homeless individual?
Our goal is basically just get our foot in the door with a certain individual, build a rapport, try and get them into services, whether that be sober living facilities or shelter, like one in Fullerton or Buena Park, etc. But ultimately, we want to provide them with getting them off the street and get them in to start a better life.
I think too, it's important to note that we've had, some people in the past couple of months ask specifically, why are our police interacting with the homeless? And so I think it's important to note that it really is primarily about funding. We have funding through the North Orange County Public Safety Task Force for our homeless liaison program. And so we have that through our police department, and we partner with the Homeless Social Services Agency that is CityNet. So it's a combination approach. The folks who are out on our streets, each of them has their own story, and the issues are complex. And when you go encounter them for the first time, you don't really know what you're going to encounter till you get there. So I for one, am really thankful for the partnership that we have that partners public safety with social services to try to help these people. Let's talk about, Brad, about the city's investment in programs that serve the homeless. A lot of people are asking us, if we are investing so much more, why are we seeing so much more homeless? I've also heard, if you build it, they will come. So let's not build it. But talk about why, if you think our city's efforts are attracting more homeless.
Yeah. And I share the concerns. It's, pandemic.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you for a second, Brad, because you're having some internet connections. It seems like technology is getting the best of all of us at times. There you go. You want to start again there, Brad? Yeah, we're gonna. Sorry, Brad. We're gonna have to come back to you. While you work on that, let me answer a couple of questions that came in online. Someone asked who brought the lawsuit against Orange County cities, and it was the Catholic Workers Society and others who brought that lawsuit. Another question came in on Facebook. What cities have adopted our model of homeless liaison officers? All 13 North Orange County service planning area cities have adopted that model. And then also, another question came in, what effect has decriminalization of drugs and petty theft had on homeless? And so perhaps, my answer to that is that the decriminalization of drugs and petty thefts has enabled the homeless problem to increase. But Paul, what would you have to say to that?
It has, again, we look at it as a holistic approach, and enforcement is obviously a big factor in that. And a lot of people misconstrue shelters as we're going to let people do whatever they want. And in fact, it's exactly the opposite. We're opening up places for people that want help and need help to get help. And those that don't come in either, for some reason, and not all of them, but some of the clients we take care of need a little persuading, but there is that element that really prey on our homeless. And I think it's really important to work with the police to identify those individuals that are just looking to create malice and crime. And so by having a shelter that is run correctly, and again, Mercy House, Salvation Army, Illumination Foundation, all three of us have figured out that part. And so it allows police to realize that, hey, the people that are on the street, what are they doing here? And I think it makes their job of enforcement a lot more effective. One thing that I'll say that's really important right now, because we're at a different position in California because of COVID. Operation Room Key, we're up in LA, Inland Empire, and Orange County. We run complete room key for the county. We have about 700 individuals that are in our sites. And I'm sure you've seen, and again in Fullerton, less people out on the street. And that's 700 people. That's a significant number that we have in housing right now. So I think it's really important in the next few months that the county works with different providers, that these individuals are not put back on the street, but actually put in the appropriate shelters for them. Right before COVID, we were up to, on our call center, we were up to about 900 calls from individuals, neighbors throughout Orange County that were saying, there's a homeless guy urinating on my street, there's somebody in my business. It was almost unmanageable. Since COVID hit and we moved, during that time, we've moved 1,700 people through those hotels. And that is a really significant number. That phone line that we took those complaints went down to three calls. So
from 900 to 3?
900 a week to 3. So everybody keeps asking me now, and I'm sure Brad, if he was on, could attest to this too. Where did the homeless people go? And the complaints pretty much, there are encampments, but not like it was. For a while there, it was just so bad that we just had so many people, and people would say, what happened? I'm seeing people in my yard, in my neighborhood, never saw that before. I think this opportunity to have Operation Room Key is a huge reset for us to really say, okay, we have these individuals, they're safe, they're housed. And by the way, in Orange County, since March 15th, we've had 12 homeless individuals test positive in our sites and in our shelters. So that's pretty amazing, showing that, that the population can do so well if they're housed. So the county's aware of it, cities are aware of it, that we're really looking to discharge these clients in appropriate shelters.
And I think too that all of the work that especially North Orange County has been doing to provide, over 700 beds to get up and running with, these 700 beds, during COVID. Hopefully that will help us as we transition from COVID crisis, back to normal life. And I'll say in the city of Fullerton, as soon as the governor said that he was taking back the armory from our emergency cold weather shelter, we set up a 24/7 emergency shelter at our Independence Park, which has successfully housed up to 200 people. And we have an outdoor courtyard area for them, so they don't have to, unless they want to, leave during the day. And so I think North Orange County communities have really stepped up to step into the gap specifically during this time. Let's talk a little bit about what I hope, Brad, technology is not our friend today. So I don't see Brad. Brad, are you there? Okay, well, we're going to go on and talk a little bit about Matt, from your perspective, what do you wish that the people of Fullerton knew about the work you do with the homeless and about the homeless in our community that they don't know?
It's honestly learning them on a first name basis. We're out there on a daily basis with them. And our main goal is sources, shelter first, last thing. We have a caseload, we're not stopping.
And Paul, what do you wish people knew about the homeless that you serve?
Number one, that the fastest growing population of homeless are seniors, senior women. People they focus on substance abuse and mental health. And yes, that population is out there. That's who we serve. But in our shelters now, we have so many elderly. One of our shelters, we actually have 6 over 80-year-old females that used to live in Newport Beach and Laguna Niguel, in Fullerton. I mean, they were working, and just because of poverty, the homeless are now really stigmatized even more than ever. And but the majority, 90% of our clients were working and are elderly. Post-COVID, we're going to see an incredible number, because that same phone line where we would get 90 a week, now we're up to about 30 or 40 of working couples, singles, elderly veterans who are going to be without housing post-COVID because they don't have jobs to go back to. So I just, I really wish and hope that people understand that it is just not all chronic street homeless, and that it is really the population of unstably housed, including children and adults, that is the fastest growing population.
So it is so important to know that, because we don't see the elderly on the streets. We don't see the children on the streets. I mean, honestly, they do a good job of hiding. And it's really those people who are the easiest to house and the easiest to get into services. And I mean, it's just so important that we continue to partner as much as we can to make sure that those vulnerable populations, we can help, so that we can focus on the harder to serve. Now, I mean, one thing we can't get away from is a public perception that everyone on the street has a mental health problem or a drug addiction problem. And I know the UCI study that came out in Orange County, it said that the majority of people out on the street are out on the street because they lack jobs, because they simply can't afford a home. And what I point out to people is, look, if you or I were out on the street for 72 hours, we would look as though we had other issues as well. The original reasons could be very easily masked for us being on the street. So, Paul, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, again, there is that population that's mentally on substance abuse. And before we work with anybody, we have to address those first. And so that's what we do, address that population. However, we kind of learn, and we're working really close with Brad and CityNet, and you'll see in the next, probably year or two, that we're starting to move further upstream. It's almost like that adage, that story of, I'm seeing all these dead bodies in the stream, I need to go up and find out why they're coming downstream. And so I think we have a pretty good understanding of prevention now, and how a little bit, just like you said, keeping people in their housing before they become homeless is so important. And right now we're seeing, again, Fullerton, and I'm not just saying this because we're on Fullerton, but Fullerton was the first city to be able to acknowledge people are in their cars, right? And we're going to see a lot of people in their cars pretty quick here, because the crescendo of how people end up homeless is they can't pay their rent, they start missing payments, then they figure, well, we'll live in a motel for a little while, but that's really expensive. And then their car starts looking like a viable option. And so fortunate, there wasn't a lot of people that were coming because they were in their car. But now other cities were really starting to see motorhomes, cars, and we anticipate that will increase. So I think we're looking at our continuum as us being providers to look more further upstream.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, because the city of Fullerton passed a pilot program for safe parking, and I was against it. I didn't have faith in it, and I was wrong. I mean, talk about the people that you were able to help through that safe parking program get back into housing.
Yeah, there was a few families with kids, and again, we just started it, and now we turn it over to, I just spaced out their name, to Pathways of Hope. They're running it now, but I think that model that the city adopted shows that we have very little problems, very little input. And I think that goes to the point you were making. They don't need as much services, the people who can catch them before they're homeless and chronically homeless. And a good point, and it's still being debated. There's data on both sides. Did your addiction lead to homelessness, or were you homeless and then got addicted? And I think, Brad could speak to that, because that's what they do. They do the outreach really effectively. They know the clients, and then they hand them off to us. It's almost like the hospital. They're the ER, we're the ICU. And so they can give us a really good assessment, and they all know each other, the workers, really well. And so that continuum is probably the most prominent in Fullerton, or will be once the facility opens. I think that's a model for the county, the state, and even we work nationally. I think it's a national model.
So Brad, that's a great lead in for you to talk about what you as a city partner are doing to improve access to services for people with behavioral health or substance abuse needs. And how do you assess people? What are you finding out there?
Yeah, hopefully this works. Am I breaking up, or can you hear me?
You're good.
Woof. Yeah, I mean, the reality is, and I agree with everything Paul just said. I mean, what often are the root causes that cause you to become homeless are not necessarily those that keep you perpetuating the homeless context. It clearly is. It is the affordable living in California. I mean, some of the numbers that are coming out now is it's not just a Fullerton problem. 27% of the homeless population is now in California nationwide. Those are staggering statistics. So identifying quick and early, so that if somebody, the goal is that homelessness is brief, rare, and non-reoccurring. That's the goal. Brief. If they are, we get them quickly before they become chronic over a year and other issues. Rare, where it's like we're actually doing a lot of preventative work, and then non-reoccurring, so that once we get them stable, we keep them stable. And that's why permanent supportive housing is critical, because we want to wrap around the resources to keep them housed. But it is true that oftentimes it's really difficult to be a person experiencing homelessness. I often say if I was out there, I would have an alcohol problem. I promise you, because it is a rough go every day. You're looking to survive. So it is true that many times people look, whether they're frankly housed or unhoused, many of us look to other things to sort of help us deal with our day-to-day struggles. They just happen to be unhoused, and it's on public display, unfortunately. So the good news is, and I'll just have one other point, working regionally. So what's true in Fullerton is we are not trying to resolve the homeless challenges in Fullerton by making it a Buena Park problem, and vice versa.
Right.
The reality is that even before the North Orange County Public Safety Task Force, law enforcement departments, city agencies, they really are committed as a collective whole to say, if somebody's got connections, and this goes to the question of where are all these people coming from? The reality is most of the people are from here. Their doctors are here, they went to school here, their friends are here, on and on. So their community connections are really strong. And so we're working across the region. CityNet happens to be doing the same thing we're doing in Fullerton in all your neighboring cities. So if something's going on over there and that person ends up on Fullerton, we take them back to Buena Park, for example. So we're not importing the problem. There are jurisdictional problems, right? This morning I was along the freeway there on Harbor, and there's a Caltrans. That's Caltrans property, not City of Fullerton or Anaheim for that matter. So part of it is jurisdictional, railroad and others. So we sort of work with wherever they're at and across the region to support them any way we can. We don't want anyone to fall through the cracks and move from city to city. As Paul said earlier, there's geographical boundaries mean nothing. But they do mean something, because that's how we organize our society. So we are comprehensive in our commitment in North Orange County. And the city leadership is committed, which is a game changer. Most cities hope it just goes away, but you guys have really grabbed the bull by the horns.
Yeah, we decided as a city long ago that we didn't want to let this situation happened to us, we wanted to help. We wanted to dig in. We wanted to be on the offensive on this very, I think, the most complex public policy issue of our time is how we serve the homeless and balance the service of the homeless with service to the rest of our community. And so I appreciate you bringing up just how regional the solution is, because yes, all of our cities are daily, weekly working together to make sure we know who the homeless in our communities are, where they're from, where their connections are, getting them back to those communities or embracing them here in our community. And the goal for all of us is not punishment of anyone, it is help for people. Helping the homeless helps not only those homeless individuals, but the neighborhoods and the school children that are walking back and forth to school and the sports teams that are playing in the parks. So there's so much more we can talk about here. And I know a couple people on Facebook have commented that we're only talking about homelessness today. You're right, we are, because it is one of the absolute biggest issues that the city is facing right now. And we have also dedicated a whole town hall to our horrible roads in town and what we need to do to fix those roads. We've dedicated a town hall to public safety and the reforms that we have made here in town with our public safety and how great a police department we have. And you can find all of those on the city's Facebook page. So I encourage you to do that. We're going to continue talking about other issues that the city's facing on these weekly town halls. But as we leave today, Paul, I want to start with you. Your closing comments, things that you want to make sure people understand before we leave today.
Again, I think we covered a lot of things, and I think to your point is that homelessness, the way cities are beginning to address them, I think is really, really helpful. It really helps to build that infrastructure because of the cost of not dealing with homelessness it would bankrupt cities, especially now. And so I think as we're moving forward, it's not only the right thing to do to take care of the clients that we're taking care of, to treat them with respect and dignity. And I think you alluded to before that, boy, someone gets a shower, clothes, and an opportunity to work, they will take it. Our clients will take it. And it's just a matter of having patience and allowing us to do what we're doing. And I think a year from now, we'll look back and say, wow, look at what Fullerton did. They have a parking lot, they have a shelter, they have great outreach, great police department. And by the way, along the way, it's saving them money, and the money they're spending up front is really prudent.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, so much. And Brad, what closing comments do you have today? And let me thank you for your partnership with the city.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Yeah, I mean, the good news, I agree with everything Paul said. The reality is the system, the continuum. So from the streets to the initial support to whatever immediate services to get them into shelter and housing right away, and then to support them ongoing, that we are well underway to building that, and that's what it takes. And I guess I end with sort of the reality is I've been doing this for almost 2 decades now. The reality is I could give you example after example after example after example that person that was causing some of the greatest problems in front of the, yogurt land, is now successfully employed and housed and back reunited with their family. I mean, those stories are real. They do happen. Some of the challenges that people are facing, both economically and now physically, we can and we should and we must, and we're committed to support those individuals with a lot of intention and focus and intentionality. We're not just checking in every once a month. This is a daily interaction to provide hope and an opportunity to those individuals. And when they say yes, there's a lot of resources coming behind them. And as a community, this is our commitment. These are our homeless friends and neighbors that live here, even if they're experiencing challenges and or dealing with those challenges, but there is hope.
Thank you very much. And then Officer Coucher, if you're still with us, we'd love to hear some closing comments from you. And I want to thank you again for being such a dedicated homeless liaison officer.
Oh, thank you. I believe it's important to provide a hand up and not a hand out to the homeless by providing funding for nonprofit organizations that provide services. Less not a homeless people, I think is important, and we're doing our best to try and help to get the shelters.
Yep. Yeah, I know you are. And thank you so much for that. As we close today, I want to address one more thing that's come up through our Facebook thread here. There's been a lot of talk about the railroad tracks, about Caltrans property, and what the city can do. Someone even asked if the city can put trash cans on Caltrans property that is having a homeless problem. We cannot do that. We work please know, we work very diligently and aggressively with Caltrans, with the railroads, as Officer Coucher said earlier. And we will continue to do that, to get those people into services and to clean up those areas. I also would ask you, as you see problems, please let us know. Let the police department know, let City Hall know where you're seeing homeless encampment hotspots, because we can't be everywhere at once. For instance, someone mentioned the Magnolia and Orangethorpe area. I drive by that area almost on a daily basis, and I see it too. And I am often on the phone with our city staff asking for people to engage with those people who are out there. And so I encourage you to do the same. We all really have to work together in that regard. And then lastly, I just want to say to Paul's point about the cost of doing nothing is so great. I mean, the cost of doing what we're doing is great, but I agree with Paul. It's nothing compared to if we just let the situation, this situation fester and not address it. This city spends on average $2 million annually to address homelessness in Fullerton. And we are as creative as we possibly can be with utilizing funds from every source that we can access, from federal and state funds to county funds, county mental health funds, to nonprofit partnerships that we have. And we will continue to do that. The expectations at the state level for local governments to engage and solve homelessness in their communities continues to grow. And so the responsibility of this city will continue to grow as well. And I'll tell you honestly, we struggle with that. So we are constantly looking to do the best resources that we have. And I know that it is important for the people of this city that we do that, to make sure that we are keeping Fullerton safe and beautiful and a healthy place for both housed and unhoused individuals. I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and I want to thank all my panelists. We will be back here again next week to talk about other pressing issues that are here in the city of Fullerton. And until then, I do wish all of you peace and health, and I'll look forward to talking with you again.